Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of A New Go of New Home Sales. I'm Anya Chrysanthon.
Hello, I'm John Lee.
And joining us today is Ken Semler. Ken is president and CEO of Impreza Modular. So Ken, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
We're so excited to have you on here today. So Ken, before we kick things off, we'd love to hear your story. So if you can tell us a little bit of your background, your journey, and what is it that you do now?
Well, Ken Semler, I started Impreza Modular, I would say 2008 officially when we started, born out of the recession. I was a custom home builder west of Washington, D.C. in that small area, working in 4 states. And after the recession, everybody kind of rethought how they did things. And, I always tell the story that I came home, said I'm going to start selling houses over the internet because I could using modular. And my wife told me I was crazy. Nobody's going to buy a house over the internet. And that was 2008. Well, 2010, we rolled out our first website. We actually started selling houses over the internet because we were doing internet sales, and I had a factory network of modular factories. I worked my way across the country. I became a licensed contractor in 42 states from 2010 to 2015. I worked through a factory network delivering modular, actually selling over the internet then. It was really the early days of being able to do that, but people would sign in, find us. We were the #1 website looking for somebody looking for a modular home or to have their home built using modular construction. And then in 2019, we had actually grown. We're looking for a way to get deeper in. We started franchising. So we created a franchising arm. We have franchises in locations: Charlotte, Central Virginia, Northern Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia, and now we're starting a company-owned franchise here in South Carolina. And we really have grown using modular construction. Last year, we started our own factory here in South Carolina. And I actually I became a publisher for a magazine in the industry called Offsite Builders. So 2021 was a busy year.
Well, it sounds like it's been busy since 2010, really. I mean, wow, holy smokes. So many questions. So one of the things that obviously jumps at me right away is 2010, you started to sell homes on the internet. So what was it? Is it something about modular construction that lent itself well to sales online? Or what was it that made you think like, oh, I'm going to do this online? Because until I would say, really last few years, we've seen people starting to sell homes online, but 2010, it was pretty much unheard of.
Yeah, I mean, we were in the early days, but I looked at it like Amazon. Again, it was 2010, so it really was the early days. But Amazon was already starting to train customers to buy online. They were already buying, $2,000 computers online. The car companies like CarMax had just started coming out. They were delivering online, so we were starting to see people willing to buy larger dollar amount items online. And but what I had the advantage was in construction was using modular construction, I could deliver across the country. And so it was really scaling is what I was looking for. How could I scale my business? And if you think about a local builder, he can only build locally because he's got to drag equipment with him everywhere, or a machine, a company machine with him. I could actually scale at a higher level and use the internet. As a local regional builder, say doing 100 homes a year, prior to the Great Recession, it was like I looked at it, well, if I could get big, be across the country, and only 3 people in every state bought a house from me, I was already selling more than I was prior to the recession. And so it was a scaling, when people thought I was crazy, I actually thought it was the most sane thing I could do. It was kind of the opposite. And so I did. And so we got to be really good at SEO. We got to be really good. So we became the top website. You can't type in modular homes, any city, state, that we're not typically 1, 2, or 3. But again, based on the mechanism of how we build, I have a factory partner network of almost 25 factories across the country. So unlike any other builder, I can actually execute and project homes anywhere in the country that nobody else can really do. So it was really the combination of my methodology of selling along with my methodology of construction that allowed me to scale quickly.
Wow, this is really, really impressive. So, Ken, for somebody who's not too familiar with modular construction, and I mean, I have an idea, right? When I hear modular construction, I'm thinking factory built, pre-manufactured homes. So, can you talk us through the process? Like to say, okay, I'm going to go online. I'm thinking I have some land. I'm going to buy a modular home. So what happens? How does that work? Is there, a truck shows up and a couple of guys put it together? Like, what's the process
Well,
like?
yeah. So, I mean, well, first of all, our industry, and I'll just want to, dispel that right now is, our industry's done a horrible job of confusing the M words, mobile, modular, manufactured. And so we're not a mobile home. We're not a manufactured home. We're not a double wide. We are a modular home. The key thing being a modular home is this site is stick built, typically built with sticks, but just in a factory. And it's built to the same building code as a home built locally. It's just built. We take a house plan, we break it up into modules. We build those modules offsite, deliver them in Lego-like fashion. We install them at a job site. And so that's what the customer does. The customer, I've started out, I kind of have all spectrums. I'm a custom home builder on one end across the country, but I'm a semi-production builder building out of a factory in South Carolina. So I kind of cover the gambit. On the custom home side that I do across the country, that's pretty much on you, just like you say. You get on the internet, you have a custom home plan maybe in your mind. You've been at a house plan website, you've got, some, you Frankenstein a house plan together that you want to build, and you send it to us. And most of the time, we have in the Mid-Atlantic, we probably have almost 2,000 house plans on our website. But what really happens is somebody already has a house plan in their mind. They'll email us the plan. They'll send us a picture of the plan with their 5 modifications. We actually modularize. We build that custom house plan in a factory. And it, just like you say, it shows up on a 1, 3, 5, 8, 10 carriers. And we just did a house in Pennsylvania that was 6,700 square feet. It was 13 carriers to build that house. But in 3 days in Lego-like fashion, a crane assembled all the boxes together. Everything fits. That's even sometimes I'm shocked. Everything fits. The last roof piece falls in and it comes together well. And then then there's what we call the stitching or the finishing the mate walls, where all those boxes, those Legos come together. There's a little bit of trim, a little bit of flooring, a little bit of drywall work, but the bulk of each one of those structurally independent modules are completed. Plumbing, electrical, wiring, paint, trim, everything. If it's the kitchen, countertops are in, tile backsplashes are up. I mean, the modules in and of themselves are complete.
Wow, that's incredible. So what about the flooring? Is the floor done, or is that something?
So flooring is, that's one of the unique things is if it's a tongue and groove floor and it goes across multiple modules like a great room, we'll install it on one half and then we'll ship loose the materials that once it's on site, it's got to cross that mate wall. We'll install the rest. So there is no visible, our goal is to make it so once you're in this house, you can't tell where the modules came together.
Wow. So did I hear you say 3 days that you put this together?
So the 6,700 square foot house, all the main modules were set in 3 days. Now, will it take you 6 weeks or so to do all of those connections and do the trim out and everything? Yes. But in today's world, can we deliver a house that size from site work start to finish in 3 months versus that would typically be for a custom home a year plus build out?
Wow. Wow. So what about the foundation, the basement? Like, how does that work?
Well, I mean, the beautiful thing is it happens at the same time your house is being built, not sequentially. So if you think about current construction, I can't start building the floor of my house until the foundation's done. And so what we do in the factory is while your house is being built in a factory, that foundation is all happening. And it's the same foundation. I mean, we're doing in the Southeast here, we try to use precast foundation systems. Well, actually on the whole East Coast, we'll use precast foundation systems. So just like your house is built in a factory, your foundation is built in a concrete plant, much like a pre-manufactured garage, a concrete garage that you see going down the highway. And so we've actually done houses where, depending on counties, what the inspections are, if there's no inspections from the time the foundation's in to when the house goes on, we've gone from a hole in the ground with gravel to a 2,200 square foot house up under roof shingled with a porch in 36 hours.
Wow. I mean, I am shocked. I've, I've
How would you do it any other way?
Right, exactly.
Wow. Okay. So can you talk to us about cost of something like this? Like if you compare, say, a 3,000 square foot traditional on-site build versus, say, 3,000 square foot modular home, what does the cost look like from start to finish, including labor and the whole 9 yards?
So for us today, what I always tell people is, because people confuse the M word, they think, oh, this is a mobile home. It's 50% the price of a conventional home. And that's not what we are. We're using the same materials, we're doing everything, and we're building it remotely. So for example, if I'm building it in central Pennsylvania at a factory and I ship it to New York or Boston, yes, there's going to be substantial savings typically because the cost of labor for a carpenter in Boston or in New York is way, 3 times as much as one or more in Pennsylvania. If I'm building it in Pennsylvania and shipping it to Ohio, well, it typically is going to cost about the same. But the benefit is even our factories are backlogged today with everything coming at us in the construction industry. But we're typically, instead of you waiting 18 months, if you went to a builder today to get a home built, we're getting it done in 6 months. So even though we cost the same, we're typically getting it done way faster. But not to disparage construction in the field, but what we see today with the construction shortages, so many times there are skilled labor positions that are open and nobody to fill them. So what happens in the field is an unskilled labor gets pushed into a skilled labor position, and we're seeing quality suffer everywhere in the industry. And the beautiful thing about manufacturing is, and that's what we've done, we've turned construction into a manufacturing process. I can bring somebody in, I can train them. And for example, a plumber isn't a plumber in the factory. We've done all the thinking work done that a plumber would do, and we're paying a person to glue 2 pieces of pipe together. And we teach them how to do that, and we inspect that in the factory so that I can take unskilled people and put them in what would be typically a skilled work position and actually get as good as or better quality for that work.
In addition, with this rapid high inflation environment, your fast lead times is a great hedge against inflation. You're able to manage those costs, in the near term.
Well, and one of the things historically, John, has been that we typically have been a just-in-time industry. If you think back, 2 years ago, a factory from the time you ordered a home to the time it was delivered to a job site would be in as little as 5 or 6 weeks. And you think through a factory process, we would get an order, process it, check costs, make sure everything was done correctly. We would order it. It would take 2 weeks for materials to come in. We would leave about 2 weeks if a door was broken or something was misordered or back ordered. That gave 5 weeks for it to go what we call online at the factory. And in many factories, it takes 3 days, 5 days, 8 days to build the entire house. It's done in the factory in 3 to 8 days. And so, but we were able to get the materials consistently in 2 weeks. Well, now it could be 14-week backlog on Windows. And so we can't do that anymore. We can control our costs to a degree, but now we actually have to inventory, which we've never had to inventory before. And that's the big thing is now when you're building so many houses so fast, you have to have storage for all those materials. And so, part of the things like we've been working with, with your company is, we're trying to get our SKUs down so we can start creating just standard palettes of colors. So we can't give our customers many choices because I can't store 14 weeks worth of every window style that we may be selling. It's just, we can't do it.
So the supply chain is also affecting you.
Oh yeah.
Like everybody else.
Yes. It's, we do everything we can to mitigate the impact, but it's having an impact. You can't get around it.
Mm-hmm. So a couple of other questions with the process, just because I think it's so fascinating. And I think most consumers certainly are not familiar with this. And I imagine a lot of builders are curious about this process. Oh, yeah. So once the home arrives on my driveway, now do I hire my own labor to put it together, or somebody comes with the home to put it together? How does that work?
Well, not that I know you're not quite capable on you, but we're not going to let you put your own house together. Sorry. That's one of the things that is the success of Impressa Modular and providing homes from so many factories. we don't just, drop it and forget it and say good luck. That's not, a recipe for success. At worst, we basically work with a local contractor to get a foundation up and ready to our specs. So when we arrive, we set that home. I mean, this is an engineering thing. It is, I joke about it being Legos, but those structural pieces have to come together. They have to be attached properly. They have to be aligned properly. They have to be finished properly, or you're not going to be a happy homeowner. So the way we ensure that is we control that. Now on site, there can still be the tradespeople, the electrician, the plumber connecting the on-site work, and maybe a mechanical contractor, but we control the actual structural pieces to make sure that comes together at every job site.
And what about financing? Is the financing process similar to traditional build, or what does that look like?
So if it's an unfinished home, if like it's what we're doing, here in South Carolina, and I'm doing a spec home, yes, it is built to the same building code. It is the exact same house. It's the same financing. If it's a construction financing where we're actually building it just like in a typical construction loan, if you're familiar with a typical construction loan, it typically is you do a little work, you get a draw. You do a little work, you get a draw as a contractor. And the factory world is kind of the opposite. The factory, no matter which factory you deal with, well, we expect a little skin in the game because the bill of materials is 50% of the cost of a house. And I just don't want, I trust you, Anya, but if you just say, hey, would you please build me a house, Ken? We usually want 20, 25% down because we're putting all the money for the materials, we're putting all the money for the labor. And in kind of a big bang approach, we just show up with your house 85, 90% done. And so typically the construction loan funds that deposit, but the bank has a leap of faith saying, well, hold it, there's not a foundation, and why am I giving you money for the house? So but banks that are familiar with modular construction, and there's lots, they fund the deposit to the factory, they fund the startup like they typically would then for the foundation to get in and pay for it. And then it's a big bang approach. When that house shows up, I talk with lots of builders, and what they don't, when they're like, well, hold it, you're shipping so much air with the house, how can that be cost effective? But what they don't realize, it's finished air is what I tell them. The labor is being shipped with the house and the materials. And so when it comes from the factory, that trim is installed, the flooring is down, the countertops are in, all that labor that went with that material was done at the factory. It's not being done on site. So the bank typically shows up, they look at the house, yep, it's done, all the modules, and they pay for it. So, it just happens in bigger chunks much faster than a typical construction. But yes, lots of lenders do fund construction loans for modular.
So as a consumer, what sort of objections do you typically hear? I can imagine some people think that maybe the quality of construction is not the same as building on site, which I would imagine is probably higher quality. So talk to us a little bit about some of the misconceptions that you typically hear from consumers.
Well, and you laid it out. It's actually funny. I love when I talk with people and they're like, well, hold it, stick built, and that's their, it's a misnomer. When they stick built, which is really being building on site, is much higher quality. But you think about everything you do, everything you own, the watch you're wearing, the desk you're sitting at was built in a factory. You typically wouldn't buy anything else unless it was built in a factory for the quality and the precision that you get from factory manufacturing. And it's the same with the house. I mean, when people say, oh, I've got a stick built or a site built house, and it's like, do you really think that contractor cutting the 2x4 across the toe of his boot got it the same every time he was cutting the 2x4 to go into your wall? There's no way. And when you come to a factory and you see the precision connections, oh, and what I really love is taking people to the job sites that afternoon after it rained all morning. So now you go in and see all that water laying on your floor of your new house. And you know what they did? They hurried up and put the roof on and closed it all in. Nobody even typically in today's environment swept it out. It eventually evaporated or soaked its way in, and they built your house around all of that. Guess what? In the factory, it's always sunny and 70. It never rains in the factory, at least most of the time. There's no roof leaks, but it's always, we have definite quality. We have quality control. We have precision in cutting. We actually stick our lumber to make sure we're at 17% moisture, 2% of below building code. I guarantee every house in the field that gets closed in is probably 26 or 29%. And what does that do for, mold, mildew, breathability? Indoor air quality is really important today. Lots of mothers and their children, we've had people with asthma. The mother calls up a year later and says, my son no longer needs an inhaler. That's an amazing story, from building indoors versus building outdoors.
So Ken, we've already touched upon many benefits of modular construction, such as faster production, potential cost savings, quality. Can you talk about some of the other benefits, such as, I imagine there's a whole lot of less waste for the environment that is produced during this manufacturing process?
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I love when people come to the factory is when I told you to go to that job site after it rains and you see all the water laying everywhere. Well, typically you see that big 30 cubic yard dumpster that's sitting out in the yard of that house. And if it's a custom house and you see it full of all the off-fall lumber cuts and all the things that, as they were building it, what really is lost on most people is that's your money in that dumpster. That's all the material that was waste that could have been saved. So now you're actually disposing of it, putting it in the environment. You paid for everything in the dumpster. Now you're having to pay to have it hauled away and disposed of. And everything's in it, wire, gypsum, wood. And at the factory, typically, if you come into a factory, and most factories, you'll see a series of 3 cubic yard dumpsters in the factory process, but it's all collected. You're going to see wiring all in one dumpster. You're going to see gypsum all in one. You're going to see wood all in one. And so I'm going to say the factory mantra is reduce, reuse, recycle. And so through design, I can I can design out so I only buy 14-foot lumber, so I don't have to cut 2 foot off. I can, design if I do cut 2 foot off, it's blocking in a wall where I needed it to install a kitchen somewhere in the process. And then if I do have to create it, then it goes to recycling. So ultimately, very little. There will be one dumpster at the end eventually that is true waste. But I mean, it is a pittance compared to what happens in site construction for what really goes into the landfill.
Yeah, I've seen some of your videos, and I also see that there's a lot less site disturbance. I mean, you're in, you're out, you don't have these big cement dump trucks in there. And I just think it's a very efficient process with a lot less, like I said, site disturbance.
We, that we really, I say in our one community we work in, we're good neighbors. When we start talking with the architectural review committee and the people there, the POA, is we are very good neighbors because one, it's a surgical strike. We're in and we're out quickly. It's not 6 or 9 months of shingle packaging blowing across their yard. It's not trucks for months and months of mud running out the roadway and them having to complain. And so it really is it's a surgical strike. And once people they get past, okay, we're confused with the M word, we get through the architectural review committee, we get the first house in, we were in and out, and the house is just as beautiful or maybe even more beautiful than their home. It's actually increasing their property values, it's beautifying their neighborhood. Then they love us. They actually then, well, hold it, I've got a friend that's going to be moving into the neighborhood. Can I have him call you? And we just have to get the first one in. And once we do that, it's usually we have the neighborhood hooked.
Wow.
When you have such compelling advantages of building modular and off-site, so what are some of the resistance that you may be facing from some of the traditional builders?
Well, most of the time, the traditional builders remember when I said earlier that modular is a method of construction. It's not a type of home, but it's a process. And we're in an industry that's been building houses the same since 1830. I mean, I think about 1903, we went from balloon framing to platform framing. That's been the biggest innovation in our industry in 200 years.
Right.
And so but it's a new process. And in all of our builders, I mean, I hate to say, we've had 1% increase in productivity and construction in the last 20 plus years, where every other industry's had 6%, 20%. We just are in an industry that, I hate to say doesn't change. And so people would always, as I do presentations in places around the country for builders that want to, examine modular construction is, don't be a one and done builder. What they've got to figure out is it's a new process. You staff it differently, you project manage it differently, you resource it differently, and you design it differently. And what that last thing is what hangs up most people is a builder comes to us and says, here's my 3 plans for my community. make it work in your factory and send it because I want it to look the exact same way. Well, that's probably the recipe for disaster to get started, because when you're manufacturing something, you actually do have to bend to the way it manufactures better. Yes, I build custom modular homes. If you tell me to build it this way, I'll build it that way. But when you're trying to do it in a more production manner, you're looking for efficiencies. And if I can move a wall 6 inches and it saves me $2,000, well, let me move that wall 6 inches. Don't say I've got to duplicate your plan. And if we can partner with a developer or a builder that wants to build, that same plan with different elevations multiple times, we can design a really hyper efficient home that's beautiful, that lends itself to manufacturing, that'll deliver, that higher quality home to the field. But we just don't have builders in today's now, get it done mindset. They're not willing to invest strategically in a better way to build. And that's what I see as the biggest problem. If you're willing to invest, we can make modular work for you. And I mean, the other thing I say in presentations is, I'll ask people, do you think we're going to get through this labor issue? And I'll get 1 or 2 builders that are thinking maybe the labor is going to get better. Labor is never going to get better. For every 6 people to leave the industry, 1 person comes in. It's not a matter if offsite construction is going to, if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. You might as well start now.
So talk a little bit about the labor shortage issue. Obviously, it's one of the biggest issues that our industry is facing right now. So how is modular construction solving that? If you can give us an example of how many skilled laborers it takes to complete the project versus the traditional method. I know you already mentioned training some of the unskilled labor in order to perform these tasks.
What I look at modular construction is really a force multiplier. And so, when I was talking earlier, like with custom home builders, if you look at like the National Association of Home Builders, the average builder member of the National Association of Home Builders builds 5 homes a year. I mean, it isn't that our industry is hyper fragmented, but that custom home builder that builds 5 homes a year might have 5 employees working for him. And if you look at what we've done historically, now the economy's got a few ripples running through it, but I still think we're strong in the custom market. Is he could only build 5 homes a year, but he could have sold 15 homes a year if he had the people. He's just been struggling with labor. So if you look at modular as a force multiplier, and you actually embrace the new processes, you could probably build with those same 5 people, build 15 homes a year and make the exact same amount of money on each home. So if you could triple your output with the exact same resources, all of a sudden I don't have a labor problem, I had a process problem. And I think that's what's really where we're at in the industry. Is it's almost more that we have a process problem in our industry, not a labor issue. We just got to get smarter as builders. And so that's where, but on the flip side, we struggle right now getting labor in factories. I mean, in the Northeast, we have a capacity issue at the factory, and it's not a physical capacity issue. We have factories running at 50% of capacity, primarily because they can't get labor. And so, that brings up a whole new opportunity with automation in the factories. And we're still in the infancy. I mean, I'm not going to lie, as an industry, it's one of an article I just wrote is, Ford spends $1 billion, to retool its F-150 line. But when it does, it knows every detail of how it works, how you're going to choreograph every part. That part's already been produced, so within a millimeter or less of precision, it fits. That does not describe the home building industry.
Exactly.
We're not there yet, guys. So, I mean, we still are doing lots of jigs. We're doing it, I call advanced mechanization in the factory. We're operating way more efficiently, but we still need labor at the factory. And, we're all struggling through it right now.
I can imagine that the modular process works especially well in the cities. I mean, it works everywhere, but imagine New York City, where you have to construct something and it's your streets, right? Traffic. So if you were able to block off that street for a fraction of the time versus traditional construction, I imagine that's a
Did
big
you just see my
advantage.
post on yesterday or this last week on LinkedIn? We just did a house in Mount Vernon, an infill duplex in Mount Vernon, and we had to block off 4 city blocks of traffic. and with the police, and we had to do 2 duplexes. Well, the locals didn't make it as easy as they should have. So we can get it done. I mean, we got a duplex done in 2 days in New York City and just outside, right above the Bronx. But it does work in the infill, and it saved us money. It really got done faster instead of being a year and a half project that duplex would have been in New York City. It's going to get done in weeks, all in. But yeah, it's a process. We've done stuff at, in DC, Washington, DC area, Northern Virginia, Arlington, and, you've got to block off the streets. It requires a lot of coordination again, but it sure beats, taking a tractor trailer or a straight truck through all that traffic for months on end versus that surgical strike of 2 or 3 days of pain and bam, it's done.
And I love hearing about innovation, and I love hearing these compelling advantages here. The next problem after people adopt is scale. And you had mentioned, you're building out a franchise network. How will that support, your factories that you're building out and scaling across your 40 or 50 licensed states?
Well, when we started franchising, it was we have well, there's lots of industry issues in construction, and one of the things even in our modular industry was we do a horrible job at training new to modular builders, and so there was just no training. So when I created franchising, it was to really extend. We already are the top, top website, top marketing website. We have all the traffic. It was how do we train new to modular builders that it's just hard to get into our industry because again, what I was saying earlier, we had so many one and done builders. We got somebody who was ready to try it, was willing to look at the new building processes, but they had no support. We don't have a mentoring network. We don't have a training. What I think is lost on most people is factories are not builders. Factories are manufacturers. So when they manufacture homes, they don't understand once it gets in the dirt, that's not what they do. And that's where I thought the advantage of Impressa is I tell people I have lots of gray hair in my company. I have lots of experience and I bring in lots of people. And so I have a lot of great guys, you got guys, gals too, lots of good gals here too, that really know what they're doing. And we could share that knowledge with a network of franchises. And so that's what we got started. And I think we're going to grow that. I mean, we're seeing here in the Southeast what we're doing with our factory from some of our internal sales team, as well as what we're doing with the franchisees. So I think it's just going to grow the industry. And hopefully we'll have some announcements with some factories upcoming here shortly, some additional factories, which I think will just help expand our franchising network. We're going to grow modular.
It's amazing. So Ken, if somebody is like, wow, this sounds really interesting, I'd like to maybe expand my business into this model, what should I be thinking about as a builder with franchising? What type of cost, or is there something special I should consider before I really prepare to enter into this business?
First of all, obviously the internet's our best friend. So I would say definitely do your research, Google, modular, understand that there is a change in process, make sure it's something that you're ready to do. I think our franchising model, which is where we kind of come in at, is because capacity is at a premium in our industry, we are kind of the avenue is through Impressa Modular, we can get you capacity right now so that if you want to come into modular, the best way is through franchising, I think at this point. And that way you can at least get product, because it doesn't help if you declare yourself a modular builder and you can't get a factory to give you a house for more than a year. So, I think that we solve that problem with our franchising model.
When you started your company, you had really related to some of your sales and marketing innovations. And I know with the franchising part, to explain modular construction is a major sales and marketing effort. How are you going to continue using sales and marketing your franchises and with the new technologies to facilitate the growth of the modular construction industry?
Well, and that's kind of how we came together, John. Great lead in, right? It's we really we started out, we're not afraid of the internet. We exploit the internet. It's a tremendous opportunity. And we already know that customers are willing to buy now. I mean, we've been living it for the last 12, 15 years. And so what we wanted to do was take it one step farther. Now that we're using our factories, we're now doing not just custom building, but I'm going to say more production building. We have homes that we're building right out of the factory. And again, we're vertically integrated. We're doing the whole thing from design through completion and then doing all the sales. And because we control that whole process, is how can we remove all the friction in that process, including sales. And so if we can pre-sell homes and make it so, the couch to contract process is how can we have in this community we're working in, I'm going to call it active adult, where a lot of folks are sitting in New York or Chicago. And I think we'll market to them. And the world has changed the day that we can do the virtual walkthroughs, we can do everything. And given the tight market, people are predisposed, I think, to buying online. And so that's what we're trying to get set up, is not just a buy now button, but a reserve now where we can tie in lots. We can give people pictures of the lot. They can it's almost like they can be there. And but some people have that reservation. So we want to try to do a reserve now and an opportunity so that if they've made the decision, but they kind of want to look, that they can reserve what they've got. They can come down in the next week or so. We offer like stay and plays at the community, so they can come down. It's a golf and lake community, and they can come down and just really confirm the decision they've already made, knowing that the home and the lot that they once been reserved for them when they get here. And then, we'd like to continue that onto a bid now button. We also spec build, and now I think we can really, it'll help us as a builder drive additional revenue in some, key lots and some locations in the community that I think we can build some, we have a really good marketing campaign from an email perspective. We can drive demand for a lot, and then hopefully we have lots of competition for people who want it. And,
bidding. And you also want to give them the ability to actually design and price their designs.
Well, that's, part of that buy now button is we have multiple plans, we have multiple elevations, multiple color palettes. And we'll actually one of the things we'll be working on is a crafted version of the home where the customer will have the ability to feel like they've customized the home that they've ordered, and we are literally building it to suit from a manufacturing perspective. So it's almost like building, when you go on to the Ford or GMC website where you can build your car and order it with that custom car, and that's what we're going to be doing with your house.
That's amazing, especially for this industry.
Yes, this is so exciting. And actually, I'm in the process of buying a car right now. So this is really making me think through the process that we put our customers through when it comes to home building, which is, a car is a fraction of an investment of a new home. And yet I can't do, even a fraction of what I'm able to do on that website with the car manufacturer. So it's crazy to me. So Ken, obviously you're a mover and a shaker, you're changing the industry, and modular within itself is revolutionary technology. And obviously you're using some cutting edge tech to help you sell that as well. So when you think about the next 5 years, what do you see for the industry?
From a technology perspective or a construction perspective?
I mean, whichever fancies you, I guess. Whichever you think is going to be more innovation.
Well, yeah, we're historically, like I said, in an industry that moves slow, but I think we've never had forces at work like we have today in making an industry change. So obviously, I'm biased, but I tell you, I think from an off-site construction world, I think we're going to see builders fundamentally have to change or modify how they build. So I think from an off-site volumetric builder, modular builder that I am, I think we're going to see a lot of even the top 10 builders start doing projects to figure out how to do more offsite construction. And it may not be what I'm doing, full volumetric, like Lego type pieces, but I think they're going to take and maybe break it down into more components or submodules and try to build more pieces of houses offsite. I think they're going to be driven to do that just because, one, they can't get the skilled labor in the field, and they're going to have to take it for precision and customer expectation. They're going to have to start delivering a better product that you can only get when you actually do it in a manufacturing environment. Technology is going to continue to grow. I mean, that's just going to happen also. And I don't even want to hazard a guess on technology because I know I'll just be flat out wrong.
You're right about that.
Best laid plans. It's going to be different.
So Ken, if somebody wants to learn more about your company and to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, actually, I got connected with John through LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is a great way. It's a great forum. So, I mean, please connect with me on LinkedIn if you're watching. And then, you can always go out. We have impressamodular.com, impressafranchising.com, impressabuildingsystems.com. We have a whole host of websites you can go out, learn more about modular, learn more about offsite construction.
Great. Well, Ken, thank you so much for being on today's show. It's been enlightening to hear your story and what you're doing for our industry. And I feel just so much lighter and then more inspired for the future of home building, since you're providing some of the solutions that are much needed for this industry. So thank you for what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Anya. Nice to be here, John. Thank you,
Thank you. We're excited to work with you. So many exciting things we can be working on.
Yeah, well, we're excited too. Good stuff's about to happen.
Yep. Thank you.
Yay.
Bye.
Bye.